personally that an increase is necessary at this time. I think that an increase in capital requirements is necessary this time.
Look, I'm going to react to whatever the proposal turns out to be in the end and give it my best assessment. And also, that's what I say.
Okay. You just also said that credit is tightening. Won't increasing capital requirements further tighten credit?
Over time, I mean, the thing about capital requirements is if we put a proposal out this summer, let's say, it'll be quite a while before that proposal is, agreed and among the agencies and then voted on, and then it'll take some years to come into full effect. So I would think, whereas interest rates, for example, have immediate effects on financial conditions and then reasonably quick effects on economic activity, capital requirements are a much more sort of medium-term, longer-term thing.
So I'd like to move on to what the impacts on lending, raising capital requirements would have. According to an academic literature by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, a 1% point increase in capital requirements could potentially reduce annual GDP by up to 16 basis points, showing that higher capital requirements come at a cost and could have significant impact on the U.S. economy. I discussed this with Vice Chair Barr last month, and expressed my concerns about what the impact of increased capital on the real economy, but he didn't answer the question directly. We're hearing from all sorts of industry that these increased capital requirements at any level would have a further tightening on lending. And if that happens, and I'm hearing from everybody, if that happens, it's going to be a real disaster. So I think anything that the committee proposes, if you could come back and brief us on before it's finalized, we would appreciate that very much.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This is probably Economics 101, but a lot of people in my district are misunderstanding 101 along with me. In May of this year, unemployment remained at 4%. For the 16th consecutive month, and at 3.7%. This means that unemployment remained at or below 4% for the longest stretch in 50 years. In the U.S., the job openings rate has fallen by more than 1.5 percentage points from its peak, while the unemployment rate has crept slightly lower. In other words, the job openings decline, but so does joblessness. And I'm wondering if there was any expectation that this would occur.
There is an expectation that the level of the ratio of job openings to unemployed people has been in historic territory, all-time highs for a while now, in the last year or so. And there is an expectation that it will come down. There a while ago, there were 2 jobs for every unemployed person. Now we're down to 1.7, I believe, or 1.6. And that still speaks to a historically tight labor market, where their demand for labor still very substantially exceeds the supply of available workers. So we do expect these things, and that, by the way, that's a way that the labor market can become less tight without having unemployment go up.
I'm sure you're hearing this all over as I am, and that is business people. I've got a good friend who has number of barbecue restaurants in Kansas City, and he is constantly telling me how difficult it is to find workers, to the point where he did something he thought he would do, put a sign out in front of his restaurants, job openings. And are there particular industries or sectors of the economy where we would expect this sentiment to be particularly true?
No, and that is right. That is there's still a significant labor shortage. The surveys at the aggregate level show that it's not as bad as it was 2 years ago. So gradually, businesses are reporting that they're having better able to find workers. Workers are reporting that they're not quitting their jobs as much as they were. That's a really good sign of how tight a labor market is how much people feel free to quit their jobs voluntarily. So those things are all suggesting a gradual cooling and a gradually getting supply and demand back into alignment. But we're not there yet. We still have a significant excess of demand over supply.
Are we also finding that I know in Missouri that in spite of the fact that there is some jelly-like movement with the economy, people are still willing to go in our community, still willing to go out and buy homes. I mean, we're not having difficulty in terms of people going out getting loans, even with the interest rates rising. If all of this continues, if the consumers are constantly paying whatever the interest rates might be, are we going to get stuck just continually going up?
Well, no, I don't think so. So in housing in particular, there is the housing sector nationally has flattened out and maybe ticked up a little bit, but at a much lower level from where it was with rates as high as they are. So supply and demand there are getting back into alignment. And I do think that, housing inflation is set to come down as we move forward. There's a particular way that the inflation is calculated there, so that you're really only looking at you're waiting for leases to come due and roll over at much lower levels of increase. So we think housing inflation will be coming down significantly over the course of the rest of this year and next year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Kim, is recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me, Chairman. And Chairman Powell, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your comment to price stability and commend your efforts to reduce inflation and make life more affordable for all Americans. Thank you for that. The 10,000 small businesses survey of 2,000 small businesses found that 77% were concerned about their ability to access capital. So with that in mind, do you think it's appropriate for the Federal Reserve to increase capital requirements at this time? And I know this was discussed earlier, but what specific analysis has the Fed conducted so we can determine the impact of this warrantless regulatory action on small businesses and other marginal borrowers?
With capital standards, it's always a trade-off. The more capital means a more stable, more sound, more resilient banking system. But it also, at the margin, can mean a little bit less credit availability, and also the price of credit can be affected. And there's no perfect way to assess that balance. Obviously, the answer is not zero capital. It's not 100% capital. So it's somewhere in the middle.
Thank you. There are estimated about 1.5 trillion of commercial real estate loans that are maturing in the next 3 years. And declining demand and the prevalence of work from home policies are putting a strain on commercial real estate market. The bulk of commercial real estate loans are held by smaller and regional banks. So is the Fed thinking about policies that could provide time for commercial real estate loans to be refinanced? And could an increase in capital requirements reduce liquidity in the commercial real estate loan market?
We're very focused on the commercial real estate situation. You're right, of course, that a good portion of the commercial real estate loans are held in smaller banks. And supervisors are very much engaged with those banks. And it's particularly banks that have a high concentration. That's what we look for among the smaller banks. And there are some of those. But there's a playbook for working your way, working your way out of these loans. And it's particularly in the office sector where, work from home is still a pretty material factor in some areas, as you know.
Thank you. So the next question has to do with the board process and procedures. What are those procedures that govern consideration and potential adoption of matters like the proposals that Vice Chair Barr is about to present to the board?
So on regulation, as opposed to supervision, on regulation, the Board of Governors votes on regulatory proposals, and it's a majority vote. We now have 6 voters. So when there is a proposal, it will be briefed carefully, and then we will have we'll have a meeting when we have a vote. That's on supervision. It's different. Most supervisory matters are really under the authority of the vice chair for supervision under the law. So most of them don't have to go to the board for a vote.
What percentage of the governors must vote in favor?
Hey guys, Jerome Powell is talking. That's why market guys is tanking. Yeah, that's the reason of the market is tanking. And guys, I'm going to cut.
Majority.
Majority of them? Okay. The California governor, prior to the depositor bailout for SVB, reportedly identified that he had been in touch with the highest levels of leadership at the White House and the Treasury. The governor also